part in Trump's newly created Board of Peace, or the International Security Force in Gaza. How would you define the balance between sovereignty, security, and alliance management at the moment? So people can jump in on this one, and I'll keep an eye out. So we'll
I mean, to say that Trump is an unreliable partner is to state the crushingly obvious. We fought the free trade deals in the NDP and the labor movement and social movements on the left in the 80s and 90s because we knew it was bonkers to tie and bind our economy so tightly to such a dominant 10 times larger economy to the south. And so now we're living the vulnerability of those decisions, and we are at Trump's mercy. I can't believe you said Board of Peace with a straight face. These are ravings. They're not foreign policy. We have to be smart and take them on and take them seriously, but we can't participate in fantasies like the so-called Golden Dome and other Trumpian dystopias. We actually have to stand up for Canada, and that means negotiating firmly.
And not only negotiating firmly, but when the emperor is insane and has no clothing, somebody has to say it. And when they do, others will listen, and people start to have the... Just because he's the president of the United States and can push a button that I've been living under the threat of all my life, the nuclear holocaust, doesn't mean you have to kowtow to him. And there are many, many people in the United States who aren't. But the things we need to be thinking about as Canadians is we need an embargo on military shipments to the U.S. now. Because not only is it bad when a country hits its own citizens with their military, but they're talking about 51st state. J.S. Woodsworth knew you shouldn't send scrap steel to Nazi Germany. We should not. We need a U.S. arms embargo now.
Ms. Ferguson.
Well, which is why I wrote to the Prime Minister and demanded that we stop sending weapons that are being used by ICE against American citizens. But we need to do more than that. You know, we need to continue to push this government to live up to its obligations, to stop sending weapons to regimes that are going to use against human rights abusers. And that continues to happen despite the fact that that is against international and Canadian law. But you know, you talked, Hannah, about developing trade relationships, and I think that is something that we also need to look at. You know, we are a trading nation. We do need to have trade relationships. We need to trade interprovincially better, and we need to develop trading relationships aside from the United States.
Would you say Mr. Carney is doing a better job at that?
I think we need to do much more, and I think we need to do less with the United States, because let's be honest, CUSMA was something that Donald Trump signed. We have a trade relationship with this president, and he broke it. So any trade relationship he makes going forward, he is just as likely to break. He is completely unreliable.
Mr. Ashton.
So, like, Trump's a bully, and we all know it. And I've been fighting bullies since I was in grade 7, which was a couple of years ago. And the only thing that they understand is strength. Strength to push back on them. You know, our current Prime Minister, he talks a tough game, but then he folds. Poilievre, well, we've all heard that guy cheering on some of Trump's decisions. So we have to stand up for Canadian jobs in our industries. We have to invest in Canadian industries, but when we invest in Canadian industries, we have to invest in job creation with that. We also have to diversify our trade agreements. We have to diversify with countries that want to work with us, that want to be allies with us. And the Board of Peace, that's not a Board of Peace. And I'm actually glad that Trump took our country off that board, because it would have been a black eye on our country.
You wanted to jump in?
Yeah, so you asked if Carney was doing a better job, and I was listening to actually a CBC radiocast, and it was counting down kind of the different interprovincial trade barriers that are being broken down, and I was waiting for agriculture. I was waiting for food. I was waiting for Carney to finally enable Canada to feed itself and to support our farming and our agricultural industry in a good way, and it just wasn't there. And when we're sitting on such a beautiful country where we could easily feed ourselves and not have a major hunger problem, we have a Prime Minister that is not putting that first. He's leaving people in poverty across the country, and it's mind-blowing. And the shout out to, like, the Council of Canadians warned us about the free trade agreement. Yep. We had a solid heads up that this was not a great idea, and we embedded ourselves in those relationships with the United States, and it's going to take a very firm turn and investment to get us out of it.
So this, here's the thing,
sorry,
though. We're talking about Trump-proofing the economy. We're talking about a Canadian shield, an economic Canadian shield that will actually protect us from these tariff attacks. There's a lot of talk about how we're all the same, we all believe in the same policies. It's not entirely true. Our campaign has put forward the essential role of public ownership to double down on the things that make Canada Canada, not just our healthcare system, investing in the care economy where more than 3 million people, mostly women, work in long-term care, in childcare, in healthcare and education, a public option for groceries, cell phones, internet connection, a public bank through Canada Post and postal banking. These are measures emphasizing the responsibility of the government to step up and govern and use our public resources in the public interest. Not everybody on this stage is willing to go there, but that's the only way that Canada can build a Trump-proof economy.
We need quick fixes today.
Sure, they're compatible. They're compatible.
And a public grocery option isn't a quick fix. What we have to do, we have to push our federal government, and when we take power eventually, we actually have to start doing what's immediate, and that's price caps on groceries.
Sure.
That's price caps on telecoms. Stronger penalties and even jail time for companies that try to gouge our prices, try to gouge Canadian citizens. This is immediate, because right now, Christ, when I was a kid, it was 20 bucks for a bag of groceries. Nowadays, it's 50, 60 bucks.
Yeah. Mr. McQuail, you want to jump in as well?
I think we need to think about an even more radical approach to say, what is trade for, and do we need it to have a healthy economy? Trade benefits those in the middle, but too often trade is based on cheap labor here and cheap and expensive products there. So we certainly need state-to-state trade, but we also need to say, what do we need as a society? How can we produce it ourselves? How can we relocalize it? And how can we make that work for Canadians? And you're right, that's not a cheap or quick fix, but in 1988, I took a float in 8 fall fairs in our area that said, "Free Canada, trade Mulrooney." You know, we've had a lot of time to get into the trouble we're in. It'll take us some time to get out. But if we don't know where we want to go, we are never going to get there. So saying, we got to trade, we got to... No. Well, yes, agriculture is very dependent on trade. But can we restructure how we do agriculture in Canada so we meet our own needs and get paid fairly for, and don't destroy the environment trying to trade ourselves to prosperity?
Well, and I do think one of the things that we have to come back to is that the way we protect our sovereignty is by protecting our economy and making sure that it is working for all Canadians. And that does involve making sure that we are investing in building things here. You know, we used to have Connaught Labs here. We used to be able to build our own pharmaceuticals in this country. We couldn't do that during COVID-19. You know, we have a housing crisis, a national housing crisis. We should be investing in the homes that people need to live in right now. We should be investing in our healthcare system, investing in those things.
A really big economic, immediate impact. Close the infrastructure gap for nations across this country. If you invest in closing that gap, we're talking about over $600 billion that's going to go into our economy. These aren't tiny numbers. And this is also supporting people to live in a great way, to make over 7 million jobs in a 2-year time period. This is just an unreal opportunity, and Carney turns and he invests in freaking pipelines and mines and these things that are not going to bring money to our economy now.
Okay. We finished that segment already. That was fast. I did not have to bring in a lot of prompts on that. So moving on to topic 2 as well. This is on energy and the environment, something I'm sure we all would love to discuss, especially now. Provincial NDP governments and the federal NDP openly clash over major projects, including oil and gas and pipelines. Does the federal NDP need a clearer, unified position on resource development, and what would that be? So we are going to start with the 45-second round, and Ms. McPherson, you're first.
Thank you very much. And listen, let's be very clear. There is a climate crisis right now. As a member of Parliament, I've taken some big climate action in our Parliament. You know, I took on the CEO of Imperial Oil. I brought forward legislation that would stop coal mining in the Rocky Mountains. You know, I worked with Indigenous people in northern Alberta to stop the release of tailings into the Athabasca Delta. And I have a plan going forward to deal with the climate crisis that we are facing that involves stopping oil and gas subsidies, you know, investing in renewables, you know, making sure that we are building a plan that brings workers along, that workers are at the center. Because if workers aren't part of every single environmental plan in this country, then that plan is doomed.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McPherson. Mr. Ashton, you're next.
So I come from a province that burns 4 months out of the year, and then the next month it floods horribly. And that's true across this country, and these burn seasons get longer and longer as we go. You see, climate is a class war because big polluters profit and their friends run away with a pocket full of money, when it's the working class at the end of the day that pay the ultimate price in their communities. Climate action has to do three things to fix this. We have to cut pollution, lower the cost for families, and create good union jobs. But to win this war, you'll need to be united and not divided, because division is the weapon of the boss.
Thank you, Mr. Ashton. Mr. McQuail, you're next.
If you visit our website, TonyMcQuailGreenProgressive.ca, there's a piece on it talks about a holistic goal for Canada. And it is something that I hope could help provincial and federal NDP work together with our riding associations and the people of Canada to say this is a vision that is hopeful in terms of both the environment and the economy and the kind of world we want to build. What we have to understand when we talk about the environment is every time we take a breath, a drink, or a bite, the environment isn't something out there. It's now something inside us and becomes part of us. So we have to have plans and decisions that build a healthy environment as part of building a reasonable economy.
Tenille Johnston.
Yeah, where I come from, people work in resource-based industries. They work in forestry, fishing, energy, and like Rob offered, wildfires come in, we're suffering from floods and droughts, and they're already reshaping what our communities look like and how we move about day to day. People there don't deny climate change whatsoever, but where we struggle is where we see the clear path to the next job when we talk about job transitions. A serious climate plan has to remove the $30 billion that we give fossil fuel industries year over year over year. That money needs to go back into renewables, retrofits, transit, care work, the land restoration, so we can rewild areas where we've had a detrimental impact to our environment.
And Heather McPherson. No. Sorry.
Again, I can do it again.
No,
I'm happy to go again.
I just
I've
turned
got
and
a
I
lot
looked
to
at
say.
you. Abby Lewis, my apologies.
I love this party. To be in a national leadership debate and have unanimity on the stage that the climate emergency is a frontal issue. We talk about it second in a debate, not left to the end. But there are differences among us. I believe it's time for the NDP to tell the truth. We have to get off fossil fuels as quickly as possible. And we're the only party Canadians can trust to do it without throwing a single worker under the bus. Workers can't transition into a promise. You can't feed your family on a slogan. That's why we need a Canadian Green New Deal to create 1 million good union climate jobs on an emergency basis under public ownership. Fossil fuel workers need those jobs waiting for them. Carney's ripped up decades of climate policy. It's our time to lead on climate.
I'm going to get to that in just a bit on the climate policy. I want to start with you. That's why I was coming to you last time, because I'm starting with you this time. You're from Alberta. That's where your riding is. Alberta is central to this debate. How does the NDP compete in the West without alienating voters whose livelihoods depend on energy?
Yeah. Listen, I am the daughter of a truck driver. My family worked in the oil and gas sector. I'm proud of the contribution that Alberta made to building Canada. But I also want us to be building a future-facing economy. You know, I want us to be building a future where my children want to stay and work in Alberta. And that means investing in renewables. But I want to be clear, because you brought this up earlier. You know, we need to work with the provincial governments, the provincial NDP across this country. You know, we need to work with them because what they are achieving for the people in the provinces is important. You know, I think about what Rachel Notley achieved and how she was able to cut child poverty in half. I think about the role she played in getting us off coal power, you know, reducing our emissions, and how important that was. We cannot be picking fights with the provincial NDP. So we have to work together.
Let me just ask you this.
Key.
You have Naheed Nenshi in a room together with the Premier of BC. How do you negotiate those two premiers?
Well, I can tell you it doesn't help. An MOU by Mark Carney and Danielle Smith that pits British Columbians against Albertans, that pits people against each other during a national sovereignty crisis. You know, what we need to do is work on those things that as New Democrats that we believe in, those values that will move us forward, and not be a burden to the provincial parties, because the provincial parties are making life better for the people in their provinces.
So let me come to you, Mr. Lewis, because you oppose fossil fuel expansion.
Yes.
is that position electorally viable in energy-producing provinces, or does it limit the NDP?
Of course it is. Albertans have known for decades that we need to diversify our economy in fossil fuel-producing regions. Everybody knows it. And the fossil fuel industry keeps stoking division and presenting us with new pipeline projects as an existential necessity to kick the can down the road and delay that time. 92% of Albertans believe that the industry should pay, as is the law, polluter pays, to clean up the mess in one of our most beautiful places in all of Canada, in Alberta. There are hundreds of thousands of oil wells that have reached the end of their life. They're leaking in farmers' fields and in local municipalities that do not have the money. They download these wells, abandoned and orphaned wells, to companies that go bankrupt, and they get rid of any responsibility for cleaning them up. That's decades of unionized labor for the very workers who dug those wells to clean up rather than further contaminate the land.
Mr. McQuail, you want to jump in?
We also need to ask, is climate change a problem or a symptom of a bigger problem? And I would say it is a symptom of a bigger problem, which is a society that has gotten addicted to using way too much energy. We are dumping millions of years of fossilized sunlight into our atmosphere instead of maintaining the carbon cycle that we're all a part of. And so we have to talk about how do we not only change the economy and transition it to renewables, but how do we redesign to drastically reduce the amount of energy and resources that economies use? Because our economic growth, which has been promoted for the 45 years since I got involved in politics, is actually becoming a cancer on the planet. So when we have these opportunities, and renewable energy is a huge opportunity, not just in terms of jobs, not just in terms of the environment, but in terms of costs and the cost to people. We put up a passive solar house in the 1970s, put up an on-grid or a grid-connected wind generator. We've got solar panels. These all help reduce your costs if you do these well and effectively. So that's what we need to be doing as Canadians, saying, what can we build to build the transition and get their jobs? But right now, it is far more effective to switch to renewable energy in terms of jobs per amount of energy produced, and also in terms of the economic value being spread across the country, not just on narrow pipelines or individual wells.
Tanil, let me ask you this. Sure. If Indigenous nations choose ownership in oil and gas projects, is it the role of the federal NDP to tell them no?
No, I think it's the role of the federal NDP to work with nations to bring forward a prosperous Canada for all, which is actually the title of the Assembly of First Nations strategic plan, is Prosperity for All. We really, truly, I'm going to speak for a lot of Indigenous people across the country, we care about our country. We want prosperity for all. We truly believe those words when we say them. And we're talking about transition. One of the biggest pieces of misinformation out there, I believe, is the fact that people think that getting jobs in renewable industries don't pay, that you're not going to be able to make the same amount of money working as an engineer building a turbine as you are if you're working as an engineer in an oil field. And that's just not true. These jobs are good paying jobs. They're jobs that are better for your body, mind, your spirit. You can have a good, amazing paying job in a renewable energy industry. It doesn't have to be this misinformation of, well, I'm not going to make as much, or there are not going to be as many jobs. That's just not true. So we need to get the education out there that demonstrates what type of workforce we're going to need to bring forward this renewable industry that we want across Canada. And we also need to set up the education system to bear that. And it needs to be free. We have to have free education to train our new workforce.
Mr. Ashton, let me bring you in on this debate. You talk about protecting workers, and I want to talk about the Indigenous part of it too. When energy jobs are tied to Indigenous-owned projects, does opposing development risk putting New Democrats at odds with both labor and reconciliation?
So look, to win this war, this climate war, we need workers, Indigenous, non-Indigenous workers. But we have people on the stage right now that are going to stand against plans like the BC Transmission Power Line, or plans to build like the Port of Churchill. We're sending more workers to the Conservative Party like that. And so when we say we need to shut down industries without jobs already being there, we just send more workers to the Conservatives. Climate action needs to be centered on workers and Indigenous people, and that includes Indigenous projects. we have to have an open mind here. We have to be able to bring new projects along, to bring workers along with that, to bring Indigenous communities along with that, and bring the rest of the communities across this country along with that as well.
Well, I think that was referencing Mr. Lewis.
You're calling out the side shot there? Well, that was very restrained for you. I appreciate that.
We're in the debate portion, so
listen,
go ahead.
We're a big country, we're an affiliated party, and we're allowed to have differences with our provincial sections. I've had warm conversations with my Premier David Eby's office, with my friend Wab Kinew, with Nahid Nenshi, and we're allowed to have differences on specific issues because we support each other as New Democrats. When I spoke to Nahid Nenshi, I told him that I love the way that he stood up against Daniel Smith's disgusting use of the notwithstanding clause, attacks on teachers, attacks on trans kids. Nahid Nenshi needs to be the next Premier of Alberta, and we have some profound differences around fossil fuels. And he was asked
how do you work that out?
Because he listen, Nahid answered it himself. He was scrummed by reporters in Ottawa, and they were like, what about this Lewis thing? And he was like, this is the UCP when they're desperate and lashing out. These are the ways they try to turn us against each other. I'm not buying it. He said, who cares? I think Albertans are smarter than that. So I'm going with Nahid right now. We shouldn't be doing our opponents' work for each other. We can stand together as New Democrats and have democratic disagreements around crucial issues of public policy.
I know we're out of time, but I'm going to give you 20 seconds, Heather.
Yeah, listen, I agree with what Tony said in terms of this is an opportunity for us. This is a huge opportunity. But we cannot be picking fights with our provincial parties, and I have seen that happen in the past. You know, we have people who have picked those fights. This is an opportunity. This is where we can go. And if we put workers at the center, and if we have a plan, then we actually can build a forward-facing economy that gets people working, that builds our country, that builds a forward-facing future for all of us.
Okay, we did go a little bit over. That's my fault. We are moving to the next section. This is going to focus on rebuilding the party. Our next question comes from the NDP in Quebec. After the video is done, each of you will have 1 minute to answer. So we're giving 15 extra seconds. To answer that question, it has to be answered in French. If you don't answer in French, we're going to cut you off. However, in the debate portion, you can choose to answer in either French or English. So let's play the video.
Bonjour, mon nom est Malcolm Lewis.
Hello, my name is Malcolm Louis Richemont. I'm been part of the NDP for a decade now, and last year I was a candidate for NDG Westmount in Montreal. I'm also a member of the board of administration for the NPD Quebec section, and I always remembered that in 2011 when the NPD won the most number of seats in its history in Quebec, and but since then, we've almost been erased from the map in Quebec. So my question for you is, what are the ideas to reverse our decline in Quebec?
In Quebec, Avi, you're first. 1 minute.
Tiens, on a échoué
So
avec la vie.
we didn't succeed to connect to the daily life in Quebec, and that's something we have to start from scratch. Our road to NDP victory goes through Quebec. It's so well known that's become a cliche. And we have to have the strategies to implement that road to success, and we have to rebuild our relationship with the union movement in Quebec, which is the strongest unionized province in Canada, and we have to target the progressive majority in Quebec, which is the strongest majority in Quebec, which means emphasizing public services, climate action, and also want to promote a certain level of political economy for the Quebec section of the NDP. And we shouldn't dictate, Ottawa should not dictate what the Quebec NDP should be doing. Heather McPherson.
C'est pas une cliché.
It is true, and it's not a cliche. The reconstruction of our party passes through Quebec. All of Canada must practice all candidates must practice their French, and that's a priority for me. To build something pan-Canadian, we have to recognize the importance of culture, of language, of Quebec history, Quebec is united, but we must rebuild in the same way as everywhere else in Canada. The party's reconstruction
Candidat plus tôt.
has to go through naming our candidates earlier, being ready, and we must also increase membership.
Place and not
Quebecers have a place at our table, and each member has a voice in the party. I know how to do the work. I do the work. I am ready.
Pour moi, ça veut dire rebâtir
For me, it means rebuilding the confidence with workers. We must
perdu.
win over what we lost.
Pas d'allure. On doit montrer aux gens l'impact.
We must show people that the NDP has the solution and we need Quebec to win.
Parler mieux français pour connecter avec les
I am the
organisateurs et doit aider les
our organizers must create relationships with unions and we must talk to people. It is important. The NDP has its roots
devant rien. C'est comme ça.
and backs away from nothing, and that is the way that we are going to win. I am the right choice for that.
Pour reconstruire la NPD,
So to rebuild the NDP, we must support
et le fournisseur
our
d'information et
ridings, individual ridings.
partout au Québec and Canada. Besoin d'une
We need a green progressive
aux Québécois et aux Canadiens.
front that to win over the confidence of Quebecers in Canada. We have to collaborate with other parties and social movements.
Coalition verte devra présenter
So
un programme
before the elections, the Green coalitions must present a program, a responsible program or platform everywhere. Social movements and associations have to work together to select a candidate who will represent the Green Coalition's program in the elections.
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question. I respect the French language and Quebec. I respect
On besoin
the
de changement dans notre parti. On doit faire,
as a party, we must make our party grow. We must fund associations, and we have to assemble workers around us. We need
tout de yon. On a besoin de nous nations autochtones.
We need a new indigenous nation. We are there for everyone, but we must win.
This is the open debate portion of this. This is 5 minutes. You can answer in either English or French. I am going to ask in English. My French is not very good. Let's start with this question. Why should Quebec voters trust a leader who cannot communicate with them in their first language? And Mr. Lewis, you're first.
On ne peut pas avoir confiance dans un chef qui ne peut pas.
So we can't have confidence in a leader who cannot communicate in the Quebecers' language. Everywhere throughout Canada, there are Francophone communities, and we cannot forget them. So, but it's not only a question of speaking French. We have to know the unique history of Quebec. We have to know the culture. There is, in a sense, a Quebec nation and of Quebecers, and these Quebecers deserve an NDP leader who knows their culture. It's not only a question of language.
Would you commit to becoming fully bilingual, and by what time and what time frame?
Oui, c'est en marche. Oui.
Time frame?
I think we're all pretty committed to becoming.
Yes, indeed.
what time frame?
actually believe in
Sorry,
being
Mr.
honest.
McQuail, just one second. By what time frame, please?
I think being fully bilingual is going to take at least a year of solid commitment to the language. And in my opinion, as someone who's spent my adult life trying to retain any ounce of my native Likwala language, where we only have like 6 fluent speakers left, I totally understand and wholeheartedly live holding on to your language as a vital component of your culture. And I think understanding that and reaching out to Quebec and offering that relational history of retaining language is huge. I think what Quebec has been able to do with holding on to their Francophone community and their language is absolutely amazing. And it's something that we've struggled to do in Canada with numerous nations across this country where our language dialects have been decimated by colonialism and Western culture. So I think we have a lot to learn from Quebec and how we retain languages and move forward with more language culture in Canada. I mean, in BC, we only have 1 Francophone school district for the entire province. We need to fix that.
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. McQuail. Go ahead.
That's okay. Well, I want to be perfectly honest. As somebody who has 2 years of high school French and is going to turn 74 in March, I doubt that I will become negotiatingly fluent en français in my lifetime. That is what translators are for. And if I deal with a native community, I will need a translator to speak with someone who doesn't speak English. But when we had Katimavik billets, I got on really well with the Francophone billets who were working class as opposed to the Anglophones who came from Rosemont in Toronto. And so what we need to understand is I do speak better with Mother Nature than a good many people. And I don't think we're in a crisis where the Francophone language or the Francophones in Quebec are going to disappear. But our planet is disappearing before our eyes, and we need somebody who understands and not that language.
Il y a 2 langues officielles au Canada. C'est pas une question de négociation.
There are 2 official languages in Canada. It's not a question of interpretation or translation. There's 2 languages.
We are going to come to you next. You've highlighted your experience. You've been a member of parliament since 2019. You understand federal politics. Given that Quebec is an essential part of forming government, why wasn't becoming bilingual a priority?
Well, pour moi, c'est une grande priorité.
Oh, for me, it is a huge priority for my family. For example, my daughter speaks French very well. It's important for me that
Ma fille pour l'école.
So it's hard. It's because it is necessary. We protect the French language in Quebec, but also in other ridings, other provinces in the country. For example, Edmonton, Strathcona.
And we have fought hard. I have fought hard for Campus Saint-Jean. I have fought hard to make sure that we are respecting and protecting French language in Alberta and across the country.
Thank you. And Mr. Ashton, let me ask you, you lead a national union representing workers across the country for more than a decade. In that role, how did you engage with Francophone workers, and why did learning French not become a part of the national leadership responsibility?
So we don't have members in Quebec. We're a BC-based union. But to answer your original question about what it means and to learn French, and I learned this lesson when I was in Gatineau having an event where it's what does the French language mean to Quebecers? And it goes back to the Quiet Revolution, when Quebecers took back their power from the church. It's when I learned that that the English language was the language of the ruling class and the French language was the language of the working class. So I'm committed wholeheartedly to learning French.
Okay, and we are out of time for this segment, so we are going to move on to the next one. So I appreciate your answers on that one. The NDP, this one is the future and role of the party. The NDP currently governs in British Columbia and Manitoba, and we've had a little bit of this discussion throughout, but we're going to get in a bit more. It's governed in Alberta, Nova Scotia, Ontario, Saskatchewan, Yukon. Why can New Democrats win provincially, but they can't seem to win federally? Mr. Ashton, you first.
Canadians are better off when the NDP is strong. I think we all know that, because when we're weak, it's the working class that pays the price. So we have to change this. We have to build on the provincial successes that we've been having and not undermine them. You see, that means real power for our members, real power for our EDAs, discussions on shop floors and not in boardrooms. Show working people that we hear them, that we get them. We're going to fight like hell for them. That's how we're going to win downtown. That's how we're going to win in the suburbs. And that's definitely how we're going to win in rural ridings. Thank you.
So is that the fact that the ideas haven't been brought forward to the federal part of the party? I'm trying to understand.
Because communication, right? We
communication.
have to be able to talk to people. We have to be able to talk to people across the country. We have to be able to understand and listen to them. And a lot of our provincial sectors have actually been able to understand and actually listen to what Canadians want in their provinces.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. McQuail.
Well, the first past the post electoral system is a great handicap, not only to the national party, but to the provincial parties. My biggest regret is that in 1990, the Ontario NDP did not work to bring in proportional representation, because we've now had 3 phony majority governments under Doug Ford. Yes, our provincial parties have had some success, but they have also often worked a long time in the wilderness because of first past the post, which ensures that working people do not get representation in Parliament or in their legislatures in proportion to how we would vote, and then we start voting strategically, and it's been a big impact nationally.
Okay, Tenille Johnston.
Yeah, I think we can win. I think we absolutely can win federally, but we have to be going to places that maybe we haven't been before. We have to be reconnecting with ridings that we've left behind for decades, and there's ridings out there that we have not been present in that are ready for change and want to mobilize and want to have that big win for us federally. The changes we want to see don't come from playing the governmental conscience for the federal government. We want to see big, bold changes like a guaranteed livable basic income, like a progressive wealth tax. And these are things that the Conservatives and Liberals are never going to get behind, and we have to do from a position of power. We don't want a softer version of the status quo. We want that big, bold change that can really secure equity across the country for Canadians.
Mr. Lewis.
Carrying right on from what Tenille is saying, our campaign has shown that despite our devastating loss in the last election, the NDP is not just reviving, we are already soaring back to life through the very thing that makes us special, our members. In just a few months, our campaign has built momentum in fundraising and memberships and crowds that everybody can see. And we've done it by sharing a bold, ambitious vision that can never be confused with that of the Liberal Party. That's key. And we've used a distributed organizing model that trusts our members. That's how we're going to win back party status and more in the next election. Local members and regional organizers are free to choose the techniques and the messages that work in their communities. The central party doesn't try to control them, but supports them and resources them. We're already coming back on our campaign.
Heather McPherson.
Listen, New Democrats are New Democrats. You know, whether we are provincial or federal New Democrats, we are the same. We share the same values. So we need to be working together to achieve those things for Canadians. I have seen what happens across this country when New Democrats are elected. You know, it is important because it makes life for the people that live in those provinces better. And so we need to get more New Democrats elected. That's how we do this. And we do that by organizing year-round. You know, we had a model in Edmonton, Strathcona. When I was elected in 2019, we chose to expand, to do year-round organizing, to get candidates selected early, to work with other riding associations, to give the power back to members. That's what we need to do to rebuild our party. That's the work that I have been doing. That's the work I'll continue to do as the leader.
We are now going to move into the debate portion. Some working class voters, and I'm going to start with you, Mr. Ashton, left the NDP because they felt the party didn't understand the economic anxiety at the time. What would you change? Just one thing would you change to win them back? And we'll start with you, Mr. Ashton.
Talking about what matters to Canadians. Jobs, affordability, housing. And that's what we're doing on my campaign, is that's what we're talking to people about. Because when you've got a guy like Poilievre that is strutting around and pretending to be a worker, well, he's about as much as a worker as I am a flower girl.
He did lure over a lot of the workers in the last election campaign.
Poilievre's pretty slick as snot, right? But what we're finding through our campaign, there's a young fella in Brantford. He came up to me and said he voted Conservative in the last election. But he signed up to our party so he could follow and vote for our campaign. And that's what's happening at every city that we go to, because they understand the messaging, that we're listening, that we're going to fight for them. We're going to bring people back to our party where they belong. We're not going to scare them away.
I think there's one thing to, have the big, bold ideas and say all the big things and create all the excitement around it, but you have to show up. This is a big thing that I felt we weren't doing enough of. We weren't showing up.
What does that mean exactly?
Physically go to these places, shake the hands, say hi, sit down, close the mouth, and listen with both ears so that you're absorbing what just happened in the last election especially. We had a tough go. And I can tell you for sure, Poilievre was in my riding way too much to make me comfortable. He kept having meetings in my community, and that was 3 years before the last election. We visited ridings that haven't seen a leader or a leadership candidate in over 2 decades.
So you're blaming the former leader for not showing up?
I'm not blaming the former leader from showing up, because our party is made by the movement of the people. We are bigger than one person, and we have to show up for each other. Not going to the places and spaces where we have big opportunities is not helping us. Prince Albert, huge opportunity in Prince Albert, and a lot of people might not see that. Prince Albert has a very high Indigenous population, and people tell me all the time, well, Indigenous people don't vote. I'm like, well, have you gone and had a conversation with them? Have you met with their leadership and talked about where they're at and what they need and what their priorities are and where they want partnership from the federal government? No, we haven't. So we have to go and build these relationships in community, not on Zoom, and bring those folks into our party in a really good way. That is a huge untapped potential that we could be bringing into the fold as a party, and we're not doing it. So there's, huge opportunity.
Mr. McQuell.
And we have to rebuild the party from the ground up so that we strengthen the foundation of the party across the country. I mean, I got involved in 1980 because I wanted Ed Broadbent to be our prime minister, and I wanted the NDP to be the government. And you ask, what's our role? Our role is not to sit on the sidelines and try and guilt or shame the Liberals and Conservatives into doing what's right. We need to get into positions where people can actually see us governed. And when they have, we have health care because Tommy Douglas showed what could be done. And then the Liberals and Conservatives got scared that, well, the CCF might form a federal government. Let's bring in health care. And now we're losing it to Danielle Smith and Doug Ford strangling it or starving it. So we need to be in government. That's the role I want to see for the NDP. But to do that, we have to rebuild the foundation of our riding associations, make sure the communication is two-way and not just about asking about money. How about information on how we could strengthen our riding associations, what's working with other riding associations, what our MPs and MPPs are doing, and what other countries are doing to solve the problems that are on people's minds, be it access to health care, food pricing, or jobs, so that we actually can show people what could be done and how we could do it, and that we have the strength to do it so they might vote for us.
Thank you, Mr. McQuell. Mr. Lewis, I want to come to you because you argue for being bold, not liberal light. Those are your words. That appeals to activists, but elections are math.
Yeah.
And we have to be frank.
To Canadians, Hannah.
If you refuse to court centrist liberals, where does your growth come from?
That's not the way it is at all, actually. But thanks for the opportunity to clarify.
You're welcome.
This is where you see the shared values. We got to show up. We got to talk to working class Canadians. Tennille, Rob, Tony, Heather knows the same thing. We need to win. How do we do it? This is what we need to focus the conversation. We launched this campaign laser focused on the everyday emergency of just trying to get by in an impossible, unfair, and rigged economy. We're the only party that has a story for Canadians about why life is unaffordable, why you're crying at the supermarket checkout, because Galen Weston is worth $18 billion, and because 5 grocery chains dominate the industry and price gouge and collude. That's why we put out a public option for groceries. And we got incredible response, Hannah and Rob, you must know this, from Conservatives. Conservatives are really interested in a public option for groceries because Conservatives understand that the economy is rigged and we live in a monopoly economy. We share values, but we have different solutions, and we're going to win by offering solutions that are actually as big as the crises we face that will solve the crisis of working class life.
On the back of all the affordability is also we should have free memberships. So we shouldn't be charging $10 for people to come join our party when we know that they're being crushed by the capitalist economy that the Conservatives and Liberals love. We need to change our approach to bringing people into the NDP family.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. McPherson. person, you wanted to get in there too.
I did want to say, we got to come back to rebuilding our party. And to rebuild our party, you're right, we do need to show up. It's why I have door knocked from Smithers to St. John's. You know, it is why I have been doing this work for years. You know, it is how we expanded the number of people that we could get elected in Alberta. And we've got to continue to do that work. And that is working with the riding associations. That is training our members. It is supporting our members. It is making sure that vetting process is transparent and fast. You know, it is making sure that we're giving the resources to our riding associations to do the work that we are asking them to do. And ultimately, we've got to go to our members and we have to trust them. We have to trust them to help us rebuild the party. The party is the members.
Okay, Mr. Ashton, sorry, Mr. Ashton first and then Mr. McQuill.
So we talk about rebuilding the party, and I'm glad to hear that my friend has a good relationship with the premiers and premiers and weightings of the provinces. I'm glad to see that he knows that he's got to talk to the provinces and have a good relationship with them, and that he's grown. Because about a decade and a half ago, something was dropped from the federal NDP that absolutely destroyed the Alberta NDP's chance ever again for being re-elected up until the head took over.
That's pretty heavy.
And so I'm really happy to see that he's grown and he's become a stronger New Democrat.
I hear a little bit of tension there, so I'm going to come to you, Mr. McQuail. I'm going to let Mr. Lewis respond to that.
Once again, thank you so much for the opportunity to clarify. First of all, the LEAP was 10 years ago, not 15 years ago. The LEAP manifesto was itself an exercise in building a big coalition, building a bigger table, as Heather might say, among people who didn't share all of the same views, from environmentalists to the union that represents oil sands workers. A senior official from Unifor was in the document making changes until the last minute. So we built a big coalition. We launched the LEAP manifesto. The head of the biggest union in Canada, CUPE National, signed it. The head of the Canadian Labour Congress at the time signed it, as well as dozens of other unions. When we came to the Edmonton Convention with it, we worked through the leader's office to make sure everybody knew it was coming, a federal resolution at a federal convention. And the resolution itself was itself a compromise that just said that riding associations should be able to debate this vision, and 3/4 of our members, our precious members, the renewable energy source of our party, 3/4 of the members on the floor in Edmonton voted for that resolution. So I think I'm the same New Democrat I've always been.
We're over time, but I'm going to give you 20 seconds. Yeah, okay, just 20.
Well, give him a bit to respond, and then I would like 10.
20 and 15.
Okay.
Go ahead.
He hasn't spoken enough. You can give
No, I did spoke before.
You guys are so polite. Okay, I'm going to go Mr. McQuail.
Okay,
Literally 15 seconds, though. I'm already over time.
I've been saying that we need to throw our arms wide and make sure that people know we want everybody, including disenchanted liberals who've been getting a smoke job in terms of what they think they're voting for, and concerned conservatives who don't like pit bull politics and understand that cooperation actually is a conservative value.
Rob, did you want to just come in? You're fine. Okay. We are going to move on to the next section if you want to jump in on something in the next section. This is a continuation of that one. I'm going to have to take some time out of it. My apologies. We're going to focus a bit more on how you would deal with this Prime Minister and this Liberal government. We did see another floor crosser yesterday from the Conservatives going over to the Liberals. It's clear that this Prime Minister would like to have a majority government. So would you find ways to work with Mark Carney and the Liberals to avoid an election? And it's 45 seconds each. Tony McQuail, I'll start with you.
Well, I think we need to come out of this federal leadership campaign strong and united. And I think we have to show him that the New Democrats are a lot stronger. If you want to hit us, this is not the time, because we're not down. We have an incredible group of candidates here who've been building the party, and we have to reach out and speak. Come out of this campaign of leadership ready to go into a campaign if he decides that he's going to try and take the opportunistic way out. And I think we have to come in very strong on proportional representation, because that's what we need. And we also have to say, if you want to call an election, we're going to call you out for the 2015 lies that you brought in, and we will go to the polls as you again if we end up with a minority.
Thank you, Mr. McQuail. Tanil.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not running to babysit a Liberal government. Definitely running to come out hard and win big in the next election. I tell people all the time that I think I'm probably one of the only folks that's like really excited about the next election. North Island Powell River is so ready for the next election, and we want to get going. And the excitement that we saw across the country in lots of tiny communities all over the place, people are ready. I think there's this misinterpretation that because the last election, took a big toll on us, we survived. We have our Magnificent Seven in there that are working harder than ever. And I think a lot of new Democrats are ready to hit the ground, hit the doors, and get going and really show what the NDP force is all about.
Avi Lewis.
Well, Hannah, as you've seen tonight, the New Democrats are the most polite and constructive of all the parties. You can see it among us
Very
tonight.
polite.
And we will always work with whatever government we can to advance the interests of working-class Canadians, to make life better. It is a country awash in wealth. And there is no reason why everyday struggles should be so intense for the 99% of Canadians trying to pay for groceries, trying to put food on the table. 1 in 4 Canadians skipping a meal in order to feed their kids. Mr. Carney understands, he's a bright guy, and he understands that we are at a turning point in human history. And the nation has an appetite for big things. We think he's going in the wrong direction. And we think that the NDP can provide a much healthier direction by doubling down on the ties that bind us, our independent sovereign economy, and the working class lives of Canadians.
Heather McPherson.
The role of New Democrats is to push the government until we become the government. And as a member of Parliament, I'm proud of some of the wins that we were able to get out of the last Parliament. There are 6 million Canadians across this country that have access to a dentist that did not before because of New Democrats. But what I am seeing from Mark Carney right now is an unwillingness to work with the other parties. I need a prime minister that is defending our public universal healthcare system, and that is not what we are seeing. While Daniel Smith takes the biggest swing at healthcare since Tommy Douglas and the NDP put it in place, and Mark Carney does not defend the Canada Health Act, I can't work with that. When we are laying off public sector employees by the tens of thousands, that is not something I can support.
Okay, thank you. And Rob Ashton.
Work with Carney. That's funny because Carney's a bigger conservative, I think, than Harper or Mulroney ever were. And so when I'm the leader of the party and we regain all those seats, we're going to be taking out bill by bill. We're going to be standing up for what Canadians want, and that's jobs, housing, and affordability. Because Carney cut 40,000 jobs, 40,000 jobs out of our government. Jobs that people need to help get them into our system, to help work with us. He allows privatization to happen across the country. And he allows corporate business to steal away our jobs.
Okay, thank you for that. We're now going to move into the debate portion of this final segment. We do have other segments after, but was the confidence and supply agreement to blame for the party's losses in the last election? And did Canadians tie the NDP too closely to Justin Trudeau's Liberals? And Mr. McQuail, we'll start with you.
Well, that is one of the major problems of being a supportive an unpowerful supportive member in a minority government. And we saw the same thing happen for the NDP in Ontario. We came up with a bunch of good ideas. The Liberals who were in power implemented our good ideas, and they got all the credit for it in the next election. And it wasn't until they dithered around for 3 years that then they were swept out of power and the NDP came in 1990. So if you're going to go into an agreement, you have to be extremely clear of what you're agreeing to and what you're supporting and what you won't support.
Let me come to you, Ms. McPherson, because you were closely involved in the agreement. If voters did punish the party for that agreement, how are you the candidate for change?
So listen, for me, when I look at the agreement and the things that we were able to achieve for Canadians, I think that's very, very important. But the key piece that we need to fix here is our electoral system, and we do need electoral reform because we should be working together. We should be working for the benefit of Canadians. You know, all politicians should be going to Ottawa to get things done for Canadians. And I understand that my role as an opposition member is to hold the government accountable, and I do that every day. You know, I'm able to stand in the House of Commons, and I will be able to stand in the House of Commons the day after this leadership race to actually fight for Canadians. That's what we need to be doing. You know, when we can get wins for Canadians, let's work together. When we can't, let's not. But ultimately, it is an electoral reform that we need to be looking at.
Mr. Lewis.
It's a time for what Nathan Cullen called violent agreement among us. And Heather, I have to say, listening to your defense of the supply and confidence agreement, I got shivers. It's why you're an incredible MP, and I really respect your leadership. I think what we had there was a failure of communication, a failure to communicate. We were staying in this, as I understand it, we stayed in the supply and confidence agreement so that we could actually get the dental care program implemented. Now, Jagmeet was in a very difficult position because he had to criticize the very unpopular Trudeau government, but at the same time, he was still, and the caucus was still supporting on confidence motions, and Canadians got confused. Are you mad at them or are you supporting them? Because when push comes to shove, you support. And that's because we needed dental care for millions of Canadians to be implemented so the next government couldn't roll it back. But we never said that clearly to Canadians. We need to practice straight talk and clarity in our country and be transparent about why we're doing what we're doing. And I just want to say that in terms of proportional representation, which we all want, I've said that if we control the balance of power in a parliament, we will go in with one demand and change the electoral system so we have an actual functioning democracy in this country. And we have to let Canadians know that we're going to fight for that because 36% of the popular vote should not lead to absolute power in Ottawa, and we all know it.
Mr. Ashton, let me bring you in on this. You said the NDP got 3 big wins from the agreement, pharmacare, dental care, which everybody, and the anti-scab legislation as well. But the Liberals did take a lot of the credit on that. I think everybody on the stage agrees to that in the last election. As leader of the party, how would you approach the relationship with the Liberals differently?
We're going to demand better for the Canadian workers. We're going to demand better. We're going to be unapologetically loud when we actually make a deal and we get something that we need for Canadians. We're going to be screaming it from the rooftops, to be honest with you. Now, we're going to listen to what Canadians want us to fight us for. And that's jobs, that's housing, that's affordability, and yes, a new electoral system. And this is what we're going to be pushing when I'm leading the NDP. We're going to be pushing for what Canadians want because we're going to be listening to them. We're going to be meeting with them, like Tennille said, where they're at. We're not going to roll over and allow the Carney government or Poilievre sitting in the wings eating our cake and stealing our thunder.
Ms. McPherson, you wanted to get in a moment ago. My apologies.
But I'm happy to. I'm happy to talk. I mean, I agree with Rob when he talks about the idea of housing being something that we need to be making sure we're pushing the government on. You know, one of the things that bothered me most about the budget that I voted against in the fall is the fact that there was half the money promised for housing. You know, it is why I brought forward one of the very first platform planks was my housing platform. And it is because we're in the midst of a national housing emergency. And we see this government not taking the breadth of that problem seriously, you know, not dealing with it with the urgency that we see. And that's one example. But there are many examples where this government does not put working class Canadians at the forefront. It is all about corporate interests. It is not about making life better, making life more affordable, making life easier for Canadians from coast to coast to coast.
And Tennille, you just want to jump in quickly.
Communication is absolutely key in all of this, and it's communication every single day, not just around election time. And it's on every platform you can imagine. It's on Instagram, it's on TikTok, it's on Twitch, it's on YouTube, it's on all these different the platforms so that we can actually reach a diverse perspective of Canadians. We need to engage our student movement and help us with that. These folks are experts in these arenas, and we're not getting the information out there. I bet there's a whole ton of people that have no idea that Carney only funded the housing program half of what it's worth. There's so many people that don't know that we have probably never actually contributed to our healthcare through the Canadian Health Act in the way that we're supposed to as the federal government. There's all these big facts that folks don't know, and we're not getting that information out there to them. And when we talk about electoral reform, can we please bring back the per vote subsidy? That $2 a vote will do a lot for our party. That'll help us get lifted out of this backward system where we have the same amount of votes, almost the same amount of votes as the Bloc Québécois, but we have 7 members and they have 22. We need to fix it.
Mr. McQuail, just short.
Well, the reason we have to rebuild the riding association connection to the party and strengthen our riding associations is based on 45 years of experience. You're never going to be able to communicate through the national media all that you want to communicate or have it come out really accurately. And so we are going to have to rebuild that base of the party, that foundation, and have really good communication so that we can tell our story to our members who can tell it to their neighbors.
Okay, thank you all. I have one final question, and this is a one-word answer, and I know you may disagree with a one-word answer, but I'm going to force it on you. Right now, your party holds 7 seats. We've been discussing that. So let's be clear. Are you running to rebuild this time, or are you running to be Prime Minister? One-word answer. Tanil, you're first.
Rebuild.
Tony.
Prime Minister.
Rob.
Rebuild.
Rebuild.
Be real. Rebuild, of course.
That's more than one word.
Okay, we'll let him have more than one word. So this is our final section. Thank you for all doing that in one word. I thought there might be a little pushback on that, so I do appreciate that. Before we wrap up this evening, I do want to ask this one last section. So this is our final portion where we ask each person an individual question. And you know what? Somehow I have lost that on my, found it. It's like a journalist's desk up here. I was going to kill time moving those papers around. Tanil, I'm going to start with you on this one. These are, for each contestant, they're tailored to either your experience, to your platform, to your campaign priorities, and you're going to have 1 minute to respond to each one. So Tanil, I am going to start with you. You've criticized, and we even heard tonight, the fundraising threshold to enter this race. Leadership of a national party requires raising significant resources. Why shouldn't members see that threshold as a test of readiness?
Yeah, I think I'm not deterred away from like a test of readiness as far as being able to fundraise. I think I'm actually quite a good fundraiser when we get down to it, especially in rural ridings. I land very well there because I understand that landscape. I don't necessarily view the landing at the $100,000 as a commitment to the kind of the democracy within our party. EDAs from across the country, we saw them do letter writing campaigns and offer to the party rules that they expected of the leadership race and also what they thought about a reasonable cost for a ballot fee. And we weren't seeing that $100,000 six-figure number. We were seeing top around $75,000, and that was really what the membership was pushing. So when we look at our leadership race and running our leadership races, we need to lean into the people of the party, the membership of the party that is this moving machine. They are the movement, and use those recommendations that are coming from our people to structure our leadership race in a way that's really respecting what they're expecting to see from us.
Thanks, Tanil. Avi Lewis, you're next. So here's your question. Your dad was a provincial leader. Your grandfather led the federal party. You describe yourself as an outsider. In what sense?
Well, I think I think maybe I'm a throwback to the NDP of the CCF NDP of my grandpa's era. Think about what Tommy Douglas did with healthcare. It was the same thing. It was a giant idea that was outside the box. I'm outside the box for some of these, for what is considered a serious political idea by the very serious people who decide what's serious in this country. I'm advancing solutions as big as the crises we face, and that's what's required in this time. That's what Tommy did with healthcare, and we need to actually get outside of this very, very narrow window, which is what my objection to Carney's leadership is exactly that. He's a smart guy, and he's very popular in Canada right now because he has a diagnosis about where we are in history. We're at a turning point. But what he wants to do is make us into a petrostate that is a militarized petrostate, a junior arms dealer on the world stage. I have a very different vision for Canada, and that's what is outside of maybe the Ottawa bubble, but certainly not outside of our tradition as New Democrats.
Okay, thank you, Avi. Heather, you are next. You are senior member of former leader Jagmeet Singh's team and served as whip during the confidence and supply agreement. Ultimately, there was the party's worst federal results. So why should members see you as change rather than continuity?
I want to start by just saying how proud I am of what our caucus was able to achieve in the last parliament and the incredible members of parliament that made up our caucus. You know, with 25 members of parliament, we fundamentally changed the direction that our country took on many things. You know, I was the foreign affairs critic, and I am proud of the way that we fundamentally changed our party and the government on issues around Palestine, on Ukraine, on Sudan, on Iran. You know, there is a way that we need to push the government of the day until we are the government. And I can tell you, the work I have done in my riding, the work I have done across this country, the record I have of being able to win my seat in Alberta in a hard election proves that I can win, that I know how to do that I've been doing that work, I will continue to do the work, and that is why I am the leader that the New Democrats need right now.
Thank you, Heather. We're going to move over to Rob Ashton now. You say you want to put workers first. I have to mention your campaign did lean on AI to generate answers to questions at one point. I see that. How do you square that with your message about protecting workers from technological disruption?
For the last 10 years as president of the ILWU, I've spent that time defending my members' jurisdiction against automation, against companies that want to bring in unilateral job cuts, by fighting against the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority and the Canadian government and alongside environmental groups, fighting against Roberts Bank Terminal 2, which is going to be, for all intents and purposes, a fully automated terminal, which will cost 90% of jobs of a conventional terminal, which will force other employers to increase their automation. I'm not against automation as long as automation works for the worker, like the egg carton factory in Brantford, Ontario that I went to, where they brought in automation and robotics that actually improved workers from 100 jobs to 300 jobs over the time frame.
Okay, thank you. Tony McQuail, you are last in this section. You're entering the race without the same infrastructure or national profile. Now everybody does know who Mr. McQuail is. What is the realistic path for you to see winning, and what does success look like for you if it isn't victory?
Well, Hannah, I've run in a lot of elections. I've always run to win. I maybe haven't always won, but I won 3 school board elections in my own community. And what does success look like? It looks like helping people understand the issues and the needs from a perspective that maybe they aren't already hearing. So that's one success. I always, when I get into an election, have a tiered series of what does success look like, and the whole stair steps. You ask the question, what am I running for? I want to be prime minister. I want to work with these people on the ideas they have to move this country forward. And, you know, when I first sent out my email, most of my friends said, are you crazy? But, you know, your ideas give us hope, and I'm feeling pretty despairing. And I thought I had no idea to get to this stage, but because of the wonderful support and the fact that some of these ideas resonate across Canada, we're here now. Let's go forward with some hope.
Okay, thank you all for that. That was our final section. Fist bump onto the right side there if you didn't see that. Before we wrap this evening, of course, we're going to hear one more time from each of our contestants. I think everybody just took a sigh of relief right now. I think I felt it up here. So we're going to hear 45 seconds from each of you. And actually, Tony, you're first again. Okay. 45 seconds to you.
Okay. Well, my friends, if we are to meet the current challenges as a party, a country, and a people, we need bold change. We need the skills and talents of all these candidates working to rebuild our movement and share our vision with Canadians. This is a lot to ask of one person. Canadian Quakers have gone from having a single clerk to having a clerk's table with a team approach to leadership. And I would suggest, as part of redesigning how we do things, perhaps it's time to have a leaders' table to share the work and the wisdom. We need a shared vision that resonates with Canadians. I hope that our holistic goal for Canada could be that vision and that it could be worked on by the team that you have before you. Let's have a leaders' table.
Tony McQuail, thank you kindly for those final thoughts. Tanil Johnston, you're next.
Yeah, as an Indigenous woman, as a social worker, I bring a different perspective to this race, and I understand the urgency for change. I've witnessed day in, day out how the capitalist system consistently and deliberately fails our communities. The leadership race is about change. It's about the next chapter of the NDP, and one that isn't afraid to lead fully and boldly with its values. I'm not here for a promotion. I'm here to drive change. I'd love for you to join me in whatever platform works for you, whether it's email, Facebook, Mastodon, you name it, come join me. Tonight, I'm asking you to stand with me and lend me, Tanil Johnston, your first choice vote, and let's get to work.
Tanil, thank you kindly. Rob Ashton, you're next.
We need to rebuild the NDP. We need to rebuild the trust that working class people may have lost in us. We have to bring voters back. And how? By bold solutions that impact their daily lives, by taxing the rich, cutting taxes on the working class, rebuilding industries, investing in industries, but investing in job creation, by building homes that Canadians can afford with Canadian workers and Canadian materials. And that's why I'm running, to take our power back, to bring the NDP back to its roots and offer real hope.
Thank you, Rob.
Because I'm the leader that listens. I'm the leader that's going to push our membership's decisions. And I'm the leader that will deliver.
Thank you. I'm sorry for interrupting. That was, you kept going.
I take long pauses sometimes.
It was a long pause. I appreciate you. Okay, Abby Lewis, you're next.
Despite a few dim sparks that flew tonight, I am looking forward to getting work with my colleagues, 4 fantastic New Democrats on stage tonight. But here's why our campaign is different. You're not just voting for me, you're voting for a whole new approach, a movement that we are building together to stop the ongoing genocide in Gaza now, for public options, a wealth tax, a Canadian Green New Deal. When Tommy Douglas and the NDP fought for Medicare, we heard all the same things. It's too radical. We won't be taken seriously. It can't be done. But Tommy knew it was what a supermajority of Canadians wanted, the kind of Canada we deserve. This is how we rebuild now. This is how we start winning. And this is how we transform the country for the many, not the money.
See, I waited a second so I didn't interrupt you. Thank you, Abby Lewis. I learned from Rob Ashton. Heather McPherson.
Thank you, and thank you to all of you for the discussion this evening. You know, New Democrats fight for what matters. It's because of the NDP that we have public health care, that we have pensions, that we have enshrined workers' rights, that we have a strong public service. You know, so many of the things that define us as Canadians, things that separate us from the United States, are there because of New Democrats. We have a responsibility to live up to that and win more seats so that we can do even more for people. I have a plan, I have a record, and I have the energy to hold this government accountable until we are government. I'm not getting ready to do this work. I am already doing it. And with your support, I know we can win more seats. We can do even more for Canadians. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McPherson. Thank you to all of the candidates on this stage. I truly appreciate you allowing me to moderate the debate. Before we sign off, though, I want to acknowledge something that is truly important. Now, in these debates, I want to thank each of you, the contestants, for putting yourself out there, putting forward your vision in a political arena. Running for leadership is not easy. I can't imagine being on your side of the podium. It requires courage, it requires conviction, and a willingness to stand up for what you believe in, knowing that you're going to be tested here as well. These are the 5 candidates who will appear on the leadership ballot to be the next leader of the New Democratic Party. So thank you all for putting your name forward. Thank you to everyone behind the scenes as well. There are teams here, there are teams behind there that put this all together. So thank you kindly for doing that. It's very important for a good public discourse. Voting opens on March 9th. NDP members can vote online, by telephone, or by mail if they have requested that option. A new leader will be announced on March 29th in Winnipeg. One of these 5 here will become the new leader of the New Democrat Party. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
Most of the time, history is loud. It sounds like explosions, roaring crowds, or people screaming on the stock exchange floor. But the end of American dominance over its northern neighbor happened quietly. At 2:14 in the afternoon today, Mark Carney walked out of the West Wing. He didn't pause for the cameras. He didn't shake the press secretary's hand. He didn't even glance back at the building. He simply got into his car, the convoy started moving, and within 4 minutes, 70 years of diplomatic tradition went up in smoke. Inside the Oval Office, Donald Trump was reportedly still yelling. Outside, on the trading floors of New York, Chicago, and Toronto, the silence was starting to crack. The Canadian dollar didn't collapse. The US dollar did. The S&P 500 didn't go up because of American strength. It dropped because of American isolation.